You think the worst thing that can happen to you is hitting zero. You imagine the bank account draining, the reputation evaporating, and you think that is the end of the story. I used to think that too, until I woke up on my 50th birthday, half a century of life behind me, and realized that my net worth was actually negative. The phone, which for 30 years had vibrated every 3 minutes with deal flow, dinner invites, and desperate requests for my time, was sitting on the nightstand, dead silent. It was a brick. I was 50. I was broke. I was alone. And I was absolutely terrified. I don't have to imagine the nightmare of losing it all, because I lived it. I was the guy who had it all. The business, the house with the infinity pool, the friends who laughed a little too hard at my jokes. And then I hit rock bottom with such velocity that I thought the impact would physically kill me. But I am here to tell you something that sounds completely insane. Something that goes against every piece of financial advice you have ever heard. Losing everything was the only reason I actually found my life. Because in the ashes of my ego, I found the only thing that actually matters. And I promise you, it is not what you think it is. Let's rewind. Let's set the scene properly. Before the crash, I wasn't just successful. I was what they call a master of the universe. My identity was welded to my net worth. I walked into rooms expecting immediate deference, not because of who I was, but because of the Patek Philippe on my wrist and the title on the business card. I was arrogant. I was perpetually busy. I treated people like transactions, useful or useless. I was climbing a mountain, kicking others in the face to get to the peak, convinced that the view from the top would justify the cruelty. Then came the collapse. It wasn't a slow, graceful decline. It was an avalanche. It started with a market turn, compounded by a betrayed partnership, and sealed with a lawsuit that drained the accounts dry. It hit me like a tsunami. Within 6 months, the assets were liquidated. The friends vanished into the ether. The dinner invitations dried up overnight. I went from being the most popular guy in the room to a social leper. I vividly remember the Tuesday the movers came. There is a specific haunting sound that an empty house makes. It's an echo that bounces off the hardwood floors. When you walk across a room that used to be filled with Italian leather furniture and art, your footsteps sound loud, hollow, and incredibly lonely. The smell of the house changed that day. It no longer smelled like expensive mahogany candles and success. It smelled of dust, cardboard, and abandonment. I sat on the floor of that empty living room, watching the sunlight stream through the windows where the custom silk curtains used to hang, and I wept. I didn't cry because I lost the stuff. I cried because I realized that without the stuff, I was nobody. I was a ghost, haunting my own life. But here is the twist. As I sat there in the silence of my own ruin, the panic began to subside, and I noticed something strange. For the first time in 20 years, the noise in my head stopped. The constant calculation, the strategizing, the paranoia. It just shut off. And in that terrifying silence, I heard a truth that would completely rewrite the next 25 years of my life. The first lesson from rock bottom is about the purge of falsehood. When you have money and status, you attract parasites. You attract people who are in love with the light you cast, but they have no interest in the heat you generate. When the money goes, the parasites vanish. It is painful, yes. It feels like a betrayal. But looking back, it was actually a cleansing. I looked at my contact list on that dead phone. It went from 500 close friends to exactly 3. 3 people who showed up when I had nothing to offer but my own broken company. One of them came over that first week in my tiny rental apartment. He didn't bring a business plan. He brought a tuna casserole in a cheap plastic container. I want you to imagine the smell of that warm tuna casserole in a cramped, dimly lit kitchen. It wasn't a steak dinner at a Michelin star restaurant. It wasn't plated on fine china. But that meal tasted better than anything I had eaten in decades. Why? Because it was seasoned with genuine care. It was real. I realized that for 30 years, I had been starving for human connection while stuffing myself with cheap attention. Attention is a commodity. Connection is a rarity. I had traded the rare for the cheap. Losing my money forced me to see who was actually standing in my corner. If you are terrified of losing your wealth because you fear losing your friends, let me tell you the brutal truth. If they leave with your money, they were never your friends. They were your customers. The second lesson was discovering the weight of stuff. I used to think my possessions were my trophies. They were the scoreboards of my life. But when I had to sell them, move into a small rental, and live out of a suitcase, I felt a bizarre physical sensation. I felt lighter. I didn't have to worry about the pool pump breaking. I didn't have to worry about the insurance premiums on the sports cars. I didn't have to worry about the security system upgrades. I realized that the things I owned actually owned me. They demanded my time, my mental energy, and my anxiety. Think about the feeling of carrying a heavy hiking backpack for 10 miles. The straps dig into your shoulders. Your back aches. You are focused entirely on the pain of the weight. Then, you reach the campsite and you drop the pack. That sudden rushing surge of weightlessness, that is what losing everything felt like. But the most profound shift happened in my relationship with time. When I was a success, I was never present. I was physically in the room with my family, but mentally, I was in Tokyo or London or watching the futures market. I was a hologram. After the crash, I had no office to go to. I had no deals to close. I had nothing but time. I started taking walks. I started watching the sunset, not as a backdrop for a cocktail party photo, but as an actual event. I remember watching a bird build a nest outside my small apartment window one morning. I stood there and watched it for a full hour. It was meticulous, patient, focused. The sensory detail of that moment is etched in my brain. The scratching sound of twigs being woven together, the chirp of the bird, the rustle of leaves in the wind. I hadn't heard those sounds in 30 years. I had been deafened by the noise of my own ambition. And here is the kicker. I was happier standing in that small apartment with $0 than I was in the mansion with millions. This is the brutal truth about what actually matters. Autonomy, connection, health. I realized that success is not a number on a screen. Success is sleeping soundly at night because you have nothing to hide and nothing left to lose. Success is laughing with a friend over a cheap cup of coffee and knowing they are there for you, not your wallet. Success is waking up without the crushing weight of maintaining an image that isn't even real. I started to rebuild, but this time I built differently. I didn't build for status. I built for purpose. I didn't chase the biggest payout. I chased the work that made me feel alive. And slowly the money came back. Not as much as before, but enough. But this time, the money was a tool in my pocket, not a master holding the leash. If you are 50 or 40 or 30 and you are terrified of losing it all, stop. The all you are afraid of losing is mostly an illusion. It is smoke. If you lost your job tomorrow, if your bank account went to zero, you would still be you. In fact, you might meet the real you for the first time. You are not your job. You are not your car. You are not your zip code. Don't wait for a catastrophe to strip you bare. Strip yourself. Let go of the need to impress people you don't even like. Cut the fake friends. Downsize the lifestyle that is suffocating you. I lost everything at 50, and I gained my life back. It was a high price to pay, but it was worth every single penny.